Welcome to FAC Live, a show that covers all things e-commerce, specifically in the Caribbean. Because I feel like they just leave us out all the time. So it's so glad that First Atlantic Commerce has decided to do this live series that we cover so many different elements because there's a complexity to the Caribbean that most outsiders do not understand. So today I'm excited to invite Ariel, the co-founder and co-CEO of Fygaro, and I'm also joined by the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce, Chris Burns, and we're going to discuss all things e-commerce as it relates to your website. I know the name of this event speaks about bringing folks to your website. This is not a conversation around advertising and digital marketing. This is a conversation around the infrastructure of your website to make sure that the customer is very satisfied with all elements of your website, because some of us may think, oh, all we need to do is have that pay button and they will come and they'll add it to the cart. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It doesn't work like that. Before I introduce our guest, I want to make sure that you smash that follow button because we do this very often. We actually have an event next week around customer experience that ties in well with this event. So I hope to see you then. So let me bring in our guests today. I could not stop them from having a conversation because they are very excited to share with you all the information as it relates to e-commerce. So before we get into it, you want to just identify where you are, Ariel?
Hi, Pauline. Thank you for having me. I'm actually speaking today from Costa Rica.
Right. I've never been, but I'm pretty certain it's the similar conditions to the Caribbean islands.
Yeah, humid weather, nice beaches, sunny, 2 seasons, pretty much rain and dry.
Okay, well, we speak the same language. And Chris is in Bermuda where there's talk of vaccination.
Yeah, well, actually, a very cold Bermuda. It's like 50 degrees here today, and yeah, we're not very comfortable in this sort of weather. Hence the sweater today. So we don't have any heat anywhere. So it feels when it's colder, it feels pretty cold. So, but yeah, no, vaccinations are rolling out. We're about 20% done on the island, so it's going pretty well. So hopefully we'll be able to open everything up fully and people will be able to travel. I'll be able to get down to Trinidad again and Costa Rica again, hopefully sometime very soon.
It's exciting to hear,
It is.
that these things are happening. Damien said that he's not hearing us. Can you hear Damien? And sometimes when it starts, it would be on mute, but it should have automatically have an audio. Just want to make sure. All right. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to introduce Ariel again and find out what exactly is Fygaro. For those, I feel like everybody knows First Atlantic Commerce by now. Even if you don't know the back end, you have a general idea that it's a payment gateway. But when it comes to Fygaro, what is Fygaro?
All right. So Fygaro was born as an invoicing solution. So an engine to help you succeed on your day-to-day business with automation and e-commerce tools. But nowadays, Fygaro is an all-in-one e-commerce platform. So powering every type of business or service provider from entrepreneurs to multinational companies, helping them access e-commerce without the normal barriers of entry, with no coding, no design skills needed, and allowing you to sell and accept payments pretty much anywhere. So social media, WhatsApp, or even creating your online web store with just a few clicks.
You said easy, and I'm sure everybody out there is like, what does that even mean? Don't worry, we'll get there for a second. So there's that element, but then somebody will be asking, so if it's so easy, why is First Atlantic Commerce in this conversation? Where do they fit in? So Chris, I want you to talk a bit about the e-commerce in a box solution, because we may have this tendency as consumers to just click around and click purchase on cart, but don't understand all the different elements that come into that because you still have to make sure that that product gets to the customer. So you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So our role in all of this is really to facilitate and power the payments element of any sort of online transaction. So, Ariel and I started working together. Well, it's 6 years ago, probably now, and when we first came to meet in Costa Rica, and the concept then, and as Fygaro was already there and evolving, was to create this product that was going to make it incredibly easy and frictionless for companies to get up and sell their products and services online or receive payments in an online method. So we our platform, our FAC Gateway platform, is pre-integrated to all the Fygaro products. So with whether it's the e-invoicing or the payment buttons or the full-blown sort of Fygaro Shops product, we come pre-integrated into that. So if a client wants to get up and running quickly, all of that integration, all that sort of complex development work has already taken place. So you don't need to be technical at all to set it up. You could really follow the easily and comprehensive laid out instructions from the Fygaro website, or contact their support team if you get stuck on one particular element. But we all felt it was important, and then also with the integration with DHL, that anybody could get this product and set it up within a matter of hours. From a technical perspective and the look and feel perspective, and that's when you're in, say, North America, for example, you want a Shopify or any of those type of products. They're great products, but trying to get all the rest of that connectivity in our part of the world is quite difficult. And we all wanted to create a solution that was easy and focused on our region, the Caribbean and Central America region, rather than being an afterthought like it is with some of the other products.
So, Ariel, can you share with people out there, because we tend to only care about ourselves. It's a flaw that we all have, and it's fine. It's okay. It's us as humans, right? So if you're watching this and you're like, okay, that sounds like a great idea, what type of businesses would qualify to say, okay, this would be the ideal business that fits into the Fygaro solutions?
Well, that's actually a difficult question to answer, because at first we had in mind a specific ideal customer, let's say kind of like a boutique or arts and crafts, or even kind of like a marketing agency. But as we kept getting new customers and making advertisements and speaking to prospects, we realized that Fygaro and e-commerce are actually for anybody. It doesn't matter if they're a multinational company or if they're just starting with a new idea. Fygaro can help anybody, and we have had success cases all throughout the Caribbean from all different verticals, from a retail souvenir store that had like 40,000 square feet of store place, physical retail, and they transformed into an online store in a matter of week with their iPad, all the way to companies that are starting out. For example, we have people renting out jet skis via WhatsApp in Barbados, airplane charters, multinational companies throughout the Caribbean, embassies, governments. There's pretty much anybody doing it. Even those selling arts and crafts. I know there is somebody selling voodoo dolls from Trinidad and Tobago, all the way to very interesting products like candles, soaps, anything you can imagine. People are selling it, even restaurants that weren't within our radar at first.
Wow, that is really good to hear, and I can't imagine some folks in Tobago would love to hear that. Hi to Jesus from St. Lucia, sliding into the comment section. All right, so a difficult question, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking maybe on the live session or the replay. Comment and let me know. This question is for Chris. When it comes to the currency issue, because Trinidad has some big red flags, and then also Barbados did apply some taxes there as well when it comes to external purchases. Does that affect someone who is utilizing this solution?
Well, so one of the benefits of the solution is that we are as a gateway connected to pretty much every bank in the Caribbean that does e-commerce acquiring. So if you are a local business, we can enable local currency and US dollar acquiring for that. So that gives you no issues from sort of FX issues when it comes to local acquiring. So some people will want to use maybe a PayPal system or a Stripe system, which only allows you to sell in US dollars. So if you're in Trinidad, for example, and your market is just Trinidad, what's going to happen there is your cardholders are going to get, your customers are going to get charged an FX fee and potentially a cross-border fee for that transaction, because it's not actually technically happening in Trinidad, right? It's actually being acquired in the US dollars. So that actual experience then for your customers is not great because whatever you think you're paying, you may be paying another 3% on top of that because you're not using a local solution. And the beauty of our joint solution here is that you can price and settle in local currency, and if you are selling internationally, and you can get a US dollar, what we call a merchant ID from your bank, which basically allows you to accept US dollars through your site or through your invoice or your payment button. You can then open that out to the rest of the world as well, without these issues or these taxes potentially.
Well, that's great news, because a lot of us only have a very small allotted US every month as consumers. Yeah. So we try to use it very wisely. And going over to Ariel about this solution, Fygaro, where do I start as a entrepreneur? I'm saying, okay, this sounds great. Where do I begin? What is the process for me to start using your solution?
All right, so it's actually very simple. You have two options. The first one is you can go online onto our website, so www.fygaro.com, and you can click on the Get Free Trial, and you can start for free with 14 days. Or if you want more of a guided option, you can actually reach out to your local bank officer all throughout the Caribbean, and they're going to be able to help you set up an account and set up that merchant account with them and connect it with Fygaro. So that you can start right ahead with your free trial and your merchant account already live.
Great. So is there anything that the business owner should be aware of or should be mindful of before deciding to jump into this space? Because you've been in the industry, I'm sure you've seen as much information as it relates to errors as well. What would be one of the biggest factors that small business owners should be aware of?
All right, so it's hard to tell because it's actually going to change island by island. So in some islands, you're going to need to be an incorporated company. In some others, you can join as a physical or independent person. So it really depends on your bank and your island. But as an overall, launching an online business needs a little bit of a mindset change. It's not just purchasing the website or the system and then sales come through automatically. There needs to be a little bit of a groundwork. So you'll need to either start a social media campaign, start sharing with your database, reach out to your known and loved ones, and let them know that you are starting a business and have them share with their connections as well, so that people start getting through. Same goes with SEO or search optimization. It's not like I launch my website and Google is automatically going to pick it up. It actually needs a little bit of people jumping into your site, searching for your name before it starts popping up on searches. So there is a little bit of groundwork to do. It's very easy. It doesn't actually require investment. Anybody can do it. It's not technical. But there is a need of that mindset change before starting. And for those that don't want that complexity of getting a website noticed, that's where we offer the payment buttons option. So with the Facebook or Instagram or even the WhatsApp line that you already own, you can actually start your e-commerce business, and those customers that are already chatting with you or texting, emailing, calling, or even following you on anywhere, even a YouTube channel or Facebook or LinkedIn like this one, they can start making purchases to you automatically 24/7.
I find it interesting that you started off saying that, each business is different, but you've literally hit the nail on a massive head, because the cultural change of just about all of our businesses locally is a huge shift, because there's this, first of all, a huge problem. I see it in the comment section a lot is, where's the price? So you'll see an image, but you wouldn't see the price, and I'm like, you're wasting my time. You spent this time putting all this information, and you're not putting my price. And that to me is a huge cultural shift that has to happen, because we have no choice, right? So going into the e-commerce in a box solution, Chris, can you just elaborate? Actually, before I go into that, Tremaine, I see your question. I have you. Don't worry. We're gonna ask that question later down in the last 15 minutes of this session. Stick around. We will definitely answer it. So, Ariel mentioned the idea of shifting across and making sure that your friends and family know what's happening and saying, okay, this is what I have. But there's also this element of the workflow for the customer, and making sure that, not just clicking and saying, I purchased this in the cart, what happens next, especially if you have a physical item. Can you elaborate on that first with the e-commerce in a box solution?
Yeah, sure. So I think, we talk about price, that's really relevant, because you got to meet your customers where they are, for sure. And I the same. If somebody's advertising something and there's no price on it, and then I have to wade through the comment section or go onto a chat or go to something else, like it's irritating, and you move on. We all have shorter attention spans now because there's so much content out there, and it's very easy, if your competitor is doing something better, than sharing the price, or a sale price on that item. So yeah, it's a great point. And the e-commerce in box offering is, it depends on the type of business you are. If you're a service entity, you may want to be using more of the e-invoicing or the payment buttons through WhatsApp, because it's easier to send your invoice through. You might not need the full-blown website that's actually going to display your services. That the websites are becoming quite static. They are certainly a useful tool, because from an SEO perspective, and if you don't have a website, people will question your business, to be honest with you. They say, okay, well, why don't they have a website? Everybody has a website. Or why don't you have a Facebook page? Or why don't they have an Instagram page? And then why can't I buy from that Facebook page? Or why can't I buy from that Instagram page? So it's our expectations have changed dramatically in terms of how we want to buy things. Is it not mobile ready? Like, does it not render properly on a phone? That's one of my pennies. If I go to a website and it's still designed for a PC or a Mac, and you've got to try and squeeze the screen in or scroll across the screen, and it's just those things just put people off immediately, and they go somewhere else. So with the great thing about the e-commerce in a box solution as well, if you are preparing that full-blown website, is the integration into the DHL API for shipping as well. And that was one of the things that Ariel's team worked on incredibly hard to get into the system, to make sure that there is an option already pre-integrated, that if you are shipping anything, you can use the DHL service to do that, and call the service, find out what the shipping costs are, and go through all the process there. So I think that's the logistics side of it is, again, sometimes something that people overlook, and they say, okay, great, I've got a product, I'm going to sell it all over the world, and then they go to the okay, great, I've got all these orders, now how am I going to deal with this? And if you don't have good customer service and good logistics in place, again, you're going to put people off. You only get 1 or 2 chances to make sure that people are happy with what you're doing. And if you don't have a great partner like DHL involved, you may run into a lot of issues.
Yes, I can support that with statistics. It's actually, last time I checked, you have 10 seconds to impress your web visitor. That just keeps
10
getting shorter
seconds.
and
Wow.
shorter.
Okay.
Yes, yes. All right, so I want to ask Tremaine's question before I head over to Ariel, and he wants to know what's the typical time frame for opening a merchant account. Chris, you want to tackle this?
Yeah, so it will vary from bank to bank, and some banks are really, putting a lot of effort into speeding up that process. So you could take a couple of weeks, sometimes longer, depending on. But it's not just about the bank; it's on us as well to make sure we're dedicated to the process. And when I talk about the process, it's paperwork. So it's an application form. There's supporting documentation, what we call KYC and AML documents. So know your customer and anti-money laundering procedures that banks have to go through, and that's every bank in the world. It's not PayPal has to do it, Stripe has to do it, your local bank has to do it, and that's just to make sure that that they're not putting their own e-commerce program at risk by signing up somebody that may be trying to perpetrate some sort of fraud, for example. So yeah, if my advice there is to say, okay, this is an important part of the process. I'm going to dedicate a couple of hours to this to make sure I've got the forms right and the documents that the bank wants right in the format they want it in. So whether it's certified or notarized in terms of your passport or your utility bill, making sure that it's within the last 3 months. And if you spend just that little bit of extra time making sure that you've got all that together, that's going to make this whole process go a lot smoother.
Great, and I'll just add to that to let you know, if you head over to firstatlanticcommerce.com/blog, we've actually started a series where it's a how-to series to open your merchant account across the Caribbean. Our first blog was launched, I think, last week, and it covers Barbados, right? All right, so we're gonna come back. We're gonna go on a quick break, but we're gonna come back because I want to drill Ariel on the social media aspect of things, because social media, it's so interesting how people villainize Facebook. I have a very strong opinion on that, but it is very important to the Caribbean. There are many businesses that would not survive without it, and I've seen the statistics as it relates to people visiting Facebook and Instagram. So it's an important part of a lot of small businesses in the Caribbean. So this buy button for social media, I think it's life-changing. And I want to cover it on our break. So we'll be back in just a second. All right, I'm happy that you're still here. You haven't left us, and we're going to have this conversation around social media. So, Ariel, give us the download, the DL, on how small businesses can utilize the buy button when it comes to social media and getting that customer to commit financially.
All right. So it boils down to something very basic. So on social media, you're already doing posts. You are publishing news updates. You're publishing images or graphics about your product, services, or anything that you are offering. So the difference here is that when you are sharing that product or service, you can do that from within the Fygaro platform. There is a very quick, easy share button that you just click, and it opens up on the different social media that you are using. And that's going to generate on the social media side that whenever the customer clicks on that image or wants to learn more about the product, they're going to be taken to a payment page. So their whole experience is going to be taken into a checkout page, so to speak, where you're going to have all the details, images, and options to choose for the product. So let's say that I'm selling cupcakes. I'm going to be able to choose if I want to buy the chocolate cupcake, the vanilla cupcake, if I want the single version, if I want a 6-pack, a 12-pack. So it's going to allow the customer to make that impulse purchase or decision just as if they would own a normal retail store. So think about it as when you are walking out on a pharmacy and doing the checkout, or at the supermarket, you have the little aisle full of last minute things. So these payment buttons are basically the same for the digital world. These are very easy to use. You just click and share on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, or anywhere you are, even existing websites. And it's going to allow the customer to make the purchase right there and then. So it's a very easy to use, very fast process. And it goes by the same steps that we're all familiar on the checkout for a standard website. So think about us purchasing on an Amazon store or your local store's website. Payment buttons will look just the same to your customer. So they'll be taken to that last step of the purchase process, where they can enter their address, they can quote their logistics either with DHL, local courier, or in-store pickup, and then add their payment details to complete the purchase. So it's very easy, very simple, and it works anywhere on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. So it's a great experience, and it will adapt to your currency. So if you're selling US dollars, it will show up on US dollars. If you have local currency, it will do the FX conversion for you and your customer and show up what's the end price that they're going to be paying. And the system will take care of the rest for you. So it will do the invoice automatically. It will reduce the inventory from your stock. It will generate a quote with DHL and get that ready for you to just select, come pick it up tomorrow. And basically everything is going to be done and ready, and your customer will be notified automatically as well.
Do you have to have a website in order to have this solution?
No, absolutely not. So payment buttons do not need a website. They live on their own. You can use them as a standalone. So you can share the link to the payment button and have the customer visit it and make the purchase. You can share it on social media or even on existing websites that don't have e-commerce capabilities. So there is no need of a website. If you do want a website, we have other solutions for that we call Fygaro shops, which are equally as easy. You just click and it activates and creates a full website for you.
That sounds so great, because as a consumer, like a great example is I had one of those Visa debit payments. Someone gave it to me. Actually, someone being LinkedIn. I know I name dropped. So I did some feedback sessions, and they paid me for my time. And I said, you know what, Pauline, make sure and support local. So I wanted to use this Visa debit. Obviously, it's not physical, it's a virtual. And I tried my best. I'm going to be honest with you, I really tried, but it was so hard to use it. I mean, I eventually used Pantry, which is part of Drop to buy my groceries, which was pretty boring, because I would have liked to, have something I didn't want, so not something I didn't need per se. But it was very difficult for me to find local companies that provided products that I wanted to buy at the time, and frivolous at that. And I was like, no, I'm not going to get into Amazon. So when it comes to these solutions, I'm excited and I'm hopeful that I'm able to spend that money in the future with local businesses. So I want to talk to Chris about the security element. I know we had Count on a couple like last year, and it's an international company and it's more from a bigger scale. But from a smaller scale, we have this massive fear, and especially with cybersecurity being SEO goal, everybody's talking about somebody's getting into somebody's data, and everybody thinks that somebody's in a hoodie and everybody's like typing away. So can you shed some light on folks who may have a massive concern on security and getting their information out there? Maybe you could start with the pricing, since that's clearly a problem. You're on mute, by the way. There we go.
I know. I think we're starting a swear jar for "you're on mute." Actually, that's the new swear jar. So yeah, pricing is always an interesting discussion, because I think what happens a lot with e-commerce is that people aren't necessarily reviewing all the cost of goods sold. And when I say that, in terms of, okay, so if I'm selling t-shirts, okay, I've worked out what my cost is to get the t-shirt. I've worked out maybe what my advertising is, maybe logistics. And then for whatever reason, accepting payments for that comes last. So there is but when if you're in an online environment, it's one of the most critical elements of growing your business, because if you can't accept payments online, then it's you're dead in the water. So there is a cost of accepting payments, and and using the Fygaro service and using the bank services. And what I think people don't realize sometimes is that there is a huge network behind accepting a payment, like between the checkout part of Fygaro through the FAC platform. So we have to go through something, and this speaks to the security, called PCI DSS compliance, which is basically like it's a financial audit, but for technical companies. So it's a technical audit on our environment where we hire an external firm and they come and try and break into our systems for 3 months to see if they can find any card data or any loopholes in our policies or anything like that. So that's a massive process that we have to go through every year. And then the bank has their processes, and then they have a processor, and then they connect to Visa, MasterCard, and all the rest of it. So this is ginormous network that is very sophisticated, highly secure, behind all of it. So, we need to, the reason I point all that out is that when, we're talking about charging cents for per transaction in terms of selling your goods online, you got to realize what's involved in actually providing that service, and the speed of the service, and the security that goes into providing that service as well. So, and you talk about actual security within there. So actually, majority of card numbers are actually compromised more at the point of sale, like in a physical environment rather than an online environment. But then those then tend to be used more in an online environment, the numbers that are stolen. So if you're concerned about using your data online, most breaches are not in an online environment. They're more from a point of sale type environment, like all the Targets and the Walmarts and all the massive data breaches that you've seen over the last couple of years. They have come through some sort of attack at the point of sale rather than through an online transaction per se. So there's a lot in there. And if you talk about security, the good thing about, if you're using a credit card to perform a transaction, you have some sort of recourse if somebody compromises that card and does fraudulent transactions. It happened to my debit card the other day. Somehow somebody got hold of my debit card and performed $3,000 worth of transactions on Apple. I'd nothing to do with me. I checked with my kids. They definitely didn't do it. But I have recourse with the bank to then go, okay, those are fraud. That's fraud. I fill in a form. I get my money back. If cash, on the other hand, if somebody steals your wallet, you have no recourse for that. There's no way to get that back. There's no way to get your cash back. If you're in a physical store, the chance of you potentially getting robbed and losing that cash is there as well. But with cards, you don't have that. You don't have that exposure from that perspective as well. So, in terms of using your data online, you also have to be careful where you're, maybe transacting online. If there's something about the website that you feel is not right, or they're not secure, they don't have that padlock up in the URL bar, they don't have an SSL certificate on their website. There's lots of things you can look out for, but the overriding feeling now from an online perspective is that everybody in that chain has to go through so much to be able to provide that service in terms of audits and security and certificates, that you should feel very secure performing an online transaction and not having your data compromised.
I have a question here from Melissa that's heading over to Ariel. Let me just. All right, so Tremaine also asked a question about DHL being the only option when it comes to the e-commerce in the box solution through FAC. Yes, but you can use Figaro without DHL. Correct, right? Ariel, just want to confirm that. Yes.
Yeah, you can use it without DHL, or you can actually set up the pricing for other providers of your choosing. With DHL, the difference is that we have native integration that will quote and request for shipment and coordinate with the messenger to come pick up the package and some other tools. But yeah, you can use pretty much any company, either domestic or international.
Great. So there's a question from Melissa around the type of business. And I think this is so important because we have a tendency to segment businesses. And I don't think that e-commerce... Let me first off by saying there's this idea of what e-commerce is, right? I was trying to pay for my health insurance. And I was saying, okay, I was literally down to the last day. And there's this thing that if it's not online for me to physically go, and it's just exhausting. I know it's first world problems. So I was like, okay, this is the last day. Let me call and see if there's an online option. And the agent was like, yes, you could pay online. I said, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, give me the banking information. I'll give it. I said, that's not what I'm asking for. I want to use my card. She's like, no, I'll give you the banking information. And that's where we need to have sort of a clear understanding of what e-commerce is, and then answer this question from Melissa, which is, can a service type business use your platform?
Yes, most definitely. So we have from doctors' offices to lawyers to accountants to marketing agencies to taxi drivers, airplane charters. Pretty much anybody can use it. There is no limitation on what you sell, except if it is illegal. In that case, then neither Figaro nor the bank nor FAC will serve you. But so long that you have the permits to sell or provide the services that you're doing, you can do pretty much anything on e-commerce. So for services, it's actually a great tool because it secures the funds for you and it provides confidence to the customer, as Chris was sharing, that if they don't get the service or if it is not how it was supposed to be delivered, they can place a complaint or a dispute and start a dialogue with either you or their bank and recover the funds in case it was some sort of like a fraud. So it is a great solution for service providers as well as for products or physical goods. So it can be used for both.
Great. So I want to speak about the what you mentioned earlier, Chris, on security, right? Because I find that I've been on a lot of local websites because in my attempt to support, but then you get this massive red flag, there's an unlock button that most browsers tell you, especially when you use new browsers like Brave, for instance. They're like, don't go, you're not allowed. And that's because that SSL is obviously there. And then I was on a website up to yesterday and I could not navigate on the menu because it was not mobile friendly. I was looking at it on my phone. So people tend to want to build grand ideas for their website, but then complaining that nobody's coming on it. So can you elaborate on the importance of those things? Because, you could go and apply for the merchant account. You can, say, okay, yes, we have the Figaro solution, but what is wrong with my customers? Why are they not paying me?
Yes. Yeah. And this is something we've, we talk about internally a lot, and we talk about with our banks, and all our different partners, because it's not simply enough to build it and they will come, because it does not work that way. You could have the best product in the world, but if you don't promote it properly, nobody will know about it. And again, you don't have to overcomplicate the website. You go to some websites sometimes and they're beautiful and they've got great video and there's stories and but then I was like, okay, now I want to buy this and I can't find where to buy it properly. It's just they haven't thought through the customer experience properly. So okay, well, what you need is a call to action. okay, now you've got a good, succinct overview of what you're selling and why you should buy it. But now, constantly pointing the customer to an easy way to buy that product or service. Because as you said, 10 seconds, I think earlier, you have to make that impression. And if you don't, then, and I think that's, because, as you mentioned before, and I think I said it before as well, not having a website that renders properly on a mobile application, on a phone or an iPad or whatever it is, terrible, huge mistake. And you'll lose people immediately for that. Not having an actual app, if you become anything a bit more significant, people are getting tired of websites too. Like, okay, where's the native app? If there's, no, you mentioned Facebook, and people talk about, well, that's just for old people now, whatever that might be. But if companies don't have that presence, again, you're kind of questioning, okay, well, what sort of company is this? Like, why isn't their Facebook page and website and Instagram page showing up as soon as I Google, look for the business? And where's the phone number and link to the URL or whatever that might be? So all those are just huge mistakes that people might make, even though they might have a great product within there. So, I think it's and that's why we're having this session and the session next week, to have these conversations. Is, okay, now we have spent a lot of time talking to people about the technology that's available. Now we need to have a bigger conversation around, okay, how do we win customers, and more importantly, how do we keep them? Because if you don't provide great customer service off the back end of that, again, you're going to lose people very quickly.
So we're going to go into a break, but before we do, I'm going to ask the questions for you, both Ariel and Chris, to ponder on by Nigel. I actually bring up sometimes the rare occasion that I see humans. I ask them about drop shipping, and it's so interesting to hear that people don't know what drop shipping is. But Nigel wants you guys to comment on shipping integration outside of DHL, and maybe something more local to me, like Zoom Caribbean, so printing certain jerseys, because I know that's a huge business. I am part of a few groups, like Facebook ad groups, which talk about branding items and drop shipping, as well as, is there a specific Fygaro training program that is already designed and available for us in LATAM? So we're going to answer these questions as we come back for a break. Just give us a couple seconds. Okay, we're back. Thank you for sticking around. If you're watching this live, hi. If you're watching this on the replay, comment in the section. We'll try to answer your question post production. So we asked a few questions beforehand. I want to start with Ariel as it relates to the question by Nigel about specific training programs for designed specifically for this service. And I know you mentioned it's pretty easy, but you want to elaborate for this question?
Yeah, thank you. So there are different support options available. So you can actually request a one-on-one demo session or assisted onboarding session where our team can help you step by step on how to set up your account and launch your website and assist you with the process on getting that merchant account with your local bank. But specifically about training, we are very soon to launch our new virtual academy for all around e-commerce and digital marketing. So that should be launching within the next few weeks. It's going to be available to all Fygaro customers and anybody else who wants to learn about entrepreneurship, marketing, e-commerce, and Fygaro. And we'll have step-by-step guides, videos, tutorials, as well as instructors that are going to be showing you the way forward in launching your online business or transforming your existing business into the digital world. So that's going to be available very soon. So I would suggest to follow up our social media or sign up for Fygaro, and you'll be able to get advance notice on when it's available.
Great. So we can get some insight on that as well, and we could share it with our database, because that sounds like a wealth of knowledge. So the next question I'm going to send over to Chris about shipping integration outside of DHL.
Well, actually, that's probably a better question for Ariel, if I'm honest.
Because
we don't get involved in the integration for the
of
the shipping methods. Actually.
Okay, tap out. Back to Ariel.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah. So for DHL, non-DHL integrations, so we do have what we call a custom ship calculator. So basically, you can create your different zones and rates and conditions so that you can enter any provider or any service that you want, all the way from curbside pickup, in-store pickup, free domestic service, or even using your own fleet of delivery. So Fygaro is already capable of doing that, and we're actually working on integrating domestic services throughout the Caribbean. So we hope to soon have more domestic options available for shipping your items to local customers as well. For those seeking out international delivery, so we have the DHL option, which is the best service available in our region and the fastest. So they have special conditions for Fygaro customers, and you can actually apply to a DHL account or even a merchant account directly from your Fygaro account. So this makes the process much simpler and easier for anybody to overcome it.
Yeah, I would like to add the DHL option is actually quite important because of the infrastructure that DHL already has. So that's why because of the session we had with DHL a couple months back, I definitely learned that. So Nigel also wants to hold on to you, Ariel, and ask you as many questions as possible. So it's fine. I've noticed at least one site utilizing Fygaro integrating structure that supports multiple companies and or products via the software. How is it recommended to devise payments to each company that has a product listing on your website/ecosystem?
So that's actually an internal process that each company will have to do on how they disperse payments to their providers. We don't actually get involved on those. The system will provide reports on what was sold and which products and all of that. So from the top of my head, what I will suggest is as soon as you start getting your sales through the door, the Fygaro system will be able to generate reports for you about which products were sold, the invoices, who were your customers, how much they paid. And with that, you can start dividing the payments between the different providers or originators of that product or service. But as a whole, Fygaro is not directly a marketplace builder, even though you can do it. But it is not designed for that. So you can tweak and use the different settings and reports that we have to create a marketplace. I do know of a few people that have done it, but I would suggest you contact our support team so that they can assist you on exactly what you're trying to do, and they provide you the best insight on how to use the system to achieve it.
Okay, great. So we're kind of winding down for a couple of minutes. So I want to put a conversation out there. We're going to bring Chris in since Ariel was the star for quite some time.
I just actually on the marketplace bit, because that is actually quite a hot topic right now. Trinidad, I think, has recently launched about 30 different marketplaces. So there's a lot of people that are trying to figure that out right now. And one of the points that I say to Nigel, if he is thinking about a marketplace, is to talk to one of the banks first as well, because that is a different type of what we call merchant account with the banks. So usually with a merchant account, you're receiving funds for goods or services that your company is selling or you are selling. A marketplace is then you are then receiving payment for potentially for multiple products and services that you don't actually own or responsible for delivering as an entity. So the bank will look at that slightly differently, and they'll say, okay, well, this is more like a payment facilitator or an aggregator And that what that means is you're collecting funds on behalf of other people. So they will put you through a different process when you apply for an e-commerce merchant account if you're a marketplace. So definitely have that conversation with the bank and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm going to structure it, because you don't want to put all that investment into a marketplace platform and then find out your bank's not going to support it from a payments perspective.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question now since Nigel had his moment. I hope we answered all your questions, Nigel. Or I'm just kidding. You could ask more questions in your comments. We'll answer them. I want to find out your feedback, Chris, because the title of this session is how to drive customers and attract new customers to your website. What is one of the biggest gaps that you've identified, because you have a sort of a overhead view of all these different companies across the Caribbean? What is the biggest gap that's out there, and what suggestion would you have for small business owners out there?
That's a great question. So there are, lots of the standard options in terms of SEO, but you can spend a lot of money on that and, maybe not get the return you're looking for on that. But it is important to have that as part of your strategy. And you'll like this part of the answer in terms of content creation, with making sure that you have that approach as well, because it's sessions like this and blogs and the conversations that we have that are becoming more Caribbean centric, opposed to just repeating a North American narrative or a South American narrative, which is not necessarily relevant to the markets that we operate in, is really important as well. So, and then I was reading a debate this morning about influencers and their value or not, as the case may be, within the markets as well. So the historic approach to just find somebody that's popular online and pay them to promote your product. Which it might get your name out there a bit, but it may backfire in terms of the fact that they are not the type of person that you want to promote your product. So choose those people carefully, to make sure that is going to work properly. I still think there's a lot of people that are not using social media effectively as well. So making sure that they are covered on the channels, but again, figuring out where who are your customers. Are they older? Are they younger? Are they, at the high end of an income range, and making sure that you're using the right tools to advertise that. So things like, Bermuda, for example, radio is still quite big here. And there's a lot of advertising. That drive time, there's 3 radio stations here, maybe, so, you can effectively get to an audience pretty quickly with radio ads. I mean, I wouldn't personally think to do that, but it is an effective tool here. Print, I think, there's a lot of, people that are still thinking print is, physical newspapers is a good idea. Give it another 5 years and, I don't think we're going to see a lot of actual newspapers within there. We're going to be paying for our content online. So, I think have a real understanding of what your customer base is, where they consume their information, and then using those channels to promote the business.
Well, I have to, if I had a stamp, I'd be like, endorsed.
Excellent. I've learned well from you, Paul.
Thank you. I want to add to what Chris is saying from a digital marketing perspective. What I've seen a lot of is people having this idea of a demographic. My ideal customer is this age, and she has 2 children, and she works at this bank. And it's insane that still is the conversation, because what social media has done is created enough data for you to make a decision based on behavior. Because I fall into the category of a specific age group of a woman who should have children, but I would spend money on my bicycle and my cat. So this idea is always a 1 degree connection to how we feel about things versus looking at the data and making decisions on that. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And I want to close off with Ariel's perspective because it's the same question, but I'm sure he has a different perspective in his way from Fygaro.
So in terms of marketing, definitely buyer persona is a key element. So understanding who you're selling, who you're talking, so that you can phrase it on the way they want to listen it to. However, on e-commerce, there has been a lot of misguidance about what you need to seek for. Chris actually mentioned briefly SEO. And that's one of the things that a lot of marketing agencies and people that don't actually know about e-commerce have been focusing a lot on. And they have you spending money on SEO, and nobody is able to explain you what SEO is. And there are actually 2 components of SEO. One is the technical side that on Fygaro we have it already solved for you. And then there is, as Chris was mentioning, content. But content doesn't necessarily mean that you need to keep writing blog posts and having webinars. That doesn't necessarily adapt to your business model. If you're selling, let's say, soaps or some arts and crafts, content can be generated in different products and services within your website so that there is descriptions that people can read through and understand what your product is. On an e-commerce perspective, SEO can also be having your About Us page complete. So when we browse on your website, we can understand who you are, what you're offering, what's your value proposition, why you're different than buying from an Amazon, as Pauline was mentioning before. Why should I choose you as a local supplier instead of an international one? And lastly, using your captive audience. So if you already have an Instagram or a Facebook account, those also count as content generation. If you are sharing your ideas, sharing your products, sharing tips and recommendations, you're going to have a captive audience that you can lead onto your website or your payment buttons and have them generating purchases. So there is a whole lot more to what you can do that is not necessarily the little basic infographic that a marketing agency or a designer or a web developer will give you. But there are more tools available to you nowadays than before, and they don't cost money. You can do them on your own from your house and start until you grow to a specific level where you say, hey, I need help now. I'm unable to manage all of these tools and my sales and the process and logistics and packing. And now I need a professional's help to keep growing and at the same time provide the same level of support and sales.
Wow, that is the best way for us to end this session because I feel seen. That About Us tidbit that you gave is so important because if I'm taking out my credit card and I can't even see the face of the person that I'm giving, like that to me is a huge deal. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, shy away from putting their face because they're like, somebody's going to get them. But no, I want to give you my money and it would be nice to see a face, that would be a good start. And social media is definitely a great avenue for small businesses to introduce themselves because you want me to take out my card. So the least you could do, that's such a great idea. And we have that recording. We're going to replay that as much times as possible. So guys, thank you so much for this session. I learned a lot. I'm sure our folks out there has as well. What we're going to do now is just say our goodbyes. Hope you guys have a great day and mask up because we have to sanitize. We're waiting for our vaccine in Trinidad. I know a few folks already done and dusted across some of the other islands, but we're hopeful. And I am looking forward to seeing you next week, Tuesday, same time, because we're going to have Samantha from Exco. And she's going to talk about customer experience. She has a wealth of knowledge, and I think it's going to mesh well with our session today. And I'll see you then. Have a good day, guys.